pass those along. Maybe more than you need there. I'm Bill Mavity. I was taking a walk along my gravel road Thursday morning and got a call from Nate Tim saying, gee, you've got an opening, we'd like to have you come fill in. And it was fine to do that. When I got here today, I had a packet waiting for me about an overlay district in Dunn County. And I'm not that familiar with it, but we have another attorney here, Bill Lamb, who, if you have any questions about this one, you can certainly direct them at him. I think I'll sit down.
Duncan. I live in Duncan.
First of all, I'm not speaking for the Pepin County Board of Supervisors.
You're fine. You're fine.
I am a Pepin County supervisor. But what I am speaking for are the villages of Stockholm, the village of Pepin, and the two towns of Pepin and Stockholm. These four communities make up the southern part of Pepin County. They stretch from the Pierce County boundary, just downriver from Maiden Rock, all the way to the Chippewa River, and then back inland a number of miles. This area has about, I think about 14% of the land mass of the county and provides 36.2% of the property tax base. It's an area that has a lot of tourism, recreation, lots of nice places down there, and the property values, homes built on the bluffs, quite a high value. I've been on the county board. I was elected in April of 2012, and I had been appointed to the board some months earlier. And I actually did not plan on getting appointed to the board, but there was a vacancy. So I went to the town boards, who would be recommending somebody, saw as an opportunity to educate them about frac sand. And talked about, I thought the towns ought to have the power and the authority to control this as opposed to counties. And lo and behold, they recommended my appointment. And I got appointed and I ran and was elected. Pepin County is unique in a couple of ways. One, we don't have any comprehensive zoning in all of Pepin County. We have one overlay district that was passed in 1994. That was the Mississippi River Bluffland Protection Zoning Code.
And overlay district, remind me what exactly that means?
Overlay district, and if you look at your handouts, maybe I should go through the handouts first so you know what you have. The first thing that you have here is the statutory authority for a county to pass a overlay zoning ordinance. And an overlay district can be any area where the county and towns have that authority as well to do overlay zoning. But it is designed to protect things within that district from incompatible uses. And what we're doing in the area where I am, we're actually banning frac sand mining in an overlay district. But the first handout is a portion of Wisconsin Statutes 59.69, and it's Section 4, the extent of powers that is relevant to the overlay zoning authority. This also gives a county, and there's a similar statute for towns, the authority to regulate anything, pass any ordinance that they want to, even if it's not mandated or permitted by any other statute, if that town or that county believes it's in the best interest of the area. In other words, is it necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of that town or that county. If you look at here, the part that's highlighted, the extent of power, then you go down to subsection C.
Were there any more of these from the gentleman?
It's in the, I'm sorry, there are more.
Here we go. I'd like to have the
The subsection C says that the county here has the authority to designate certain areas, uses, or purposes which may be subjected to special regulation. And up in the extent of power, it talks about one of the things that you can do under this authority is to prohibit uses as well. The second part of your materials, there's a page 22, from a zoning manual put out by the Department of Extension, or University of Wisconsin Extension Division, which shows the bottom part of that page some of the purposes, some of the uses for the overlay zoning district. So clearly, in this case, counties have the authority to establish a overlay district, and within that district to strictly regulate or to ban land uses or activities that the county feels would jeopardize other things within that district that ought to be protected.
Can a township do it?
I believe that the Home Rule Authority, which is in the state constitution, and it's codified in, I think, 62.37. I'm not sure, but it's one of the village power statutes, gives the towns the same authority to do overlay zoning. Now, it's easier for a town to do that on its own if the county, like Pepin, doesn't have any comprehensive zoning. If you've got comprehensive zoning, there's extra steps that a town has to go through to do it. Again, back to the materials, the next part is the proposed Great River Road Preservation Zoning Code, which I really want to talk about, and then the final item is the map. Let's look at the map first. This is a map of the southern part of Pepin County. That would be the last item in your materials that I handed out. This shows the area where there's the two townships, Stockholm and Pepin, and the two villages, Stockholm and Pepin, which are in the yellow area. And the blue up in the upper left, the top part of it is green or blue, is the the Mississippi River Bluffland Protection Zoning Code. All of that has been encompassed into this new overlay district. So everything in green and blue along the river is now part of our proposed overlay district zoning area. When you do any type of zoning, there's a number of things that are involved in it, but you got to have a good purpose for it. You want to protect something. You want to make something protected from incompatible uses. And to do that, you've got to have a statement of fact or a finding of fact, the reasons that you need to do it. And an overlay district or any zoning has to have findings of fact that are actually supported by some studies, some facts, some findings. Because when it's challenged, for the most part, courts have to defer to legislative acts by towns and counties. It's very differential. But what they look at is to see if there's any rational basis for the regulation. And the U.S. Supreme Court, looking at the same issue, has said even if it's a debatable point that the county or the town had in passing the ordinance, that's good enough. That can't be overturned. And that's dealing primarily with the due process and the equal protection, the takings issue type of challenges that might be brought. Our proposed ordinance, and before I go into it, let me give you a quick history here. I'm an attorney, so I've got an advantage over most county boards. There's not many attorneys that are on county boards. And that advantage, in large part, is being able to see through some of the flim-flam, some of the phony stuff that's thrown at the board. I proposed a moratorium ordinance back in October of 2011. And the same lawyer that the other attorney was talking about, well, it was Bill Thiel from Weld, Pren, Ricci, and I don't quite know all the names. He blindsided me the 2 days before the zoning meeting and our zoning committee meeting, and said that moratoriums are illegal. There's no authority for counties to pass it, and we had a big debate about it. He even wrote a legal opinion about it. This is before he lost the Cooks Valley case. And of course, 59.69 subsection 4 makes it clear you can do this. But if I had not been on that board, or some attorney had not been there, it's not just me, but someone that had knowledge of this, they wouldn't have had a moratorium, and we wouldn't be here trying to protect the tourism along Lake Pepin. it would be gone.
What's your opinion on extending a moratorium? You think that's possible?
We extended ours, we passed a one-year moratorium, and last December, we extended ours for 6 months.
And you think that would be defendable?
It is defensible.
Okay.
And before this statute was passed about a year and a half ago, a 2-year moratorium was deemed reasonable by the Wisconsin Supreme Court.
So if you had 1 year, you could add another 1 year?
Well, under the new statute, that's going to be tougher to do. They've kind of limited it to just 6 months extension. I think that's the way it's being interpreted.
1 6-month extension?
1 6-month extension. But I'm not so sure that that's not, I think you might even push it to 2 years, and if it were challenged, they can point back to a Wisconsin Supreme Court case. And I don't know that the mining companies would want to challenge that for 6 months, because if they lost that, they would be losing the value of what they think they have in that new statute. Let me go back to the findings of fact. We have a zoning administrator that opposed the moratorium. In fact, he's the one that brought in the attorney, Bill Thiel, to challenge it. They're doing the same thing this time. They're opposing this. So this did not come from our zoning office. This came from a group of citizens who formed a private nonprofit corporation, a 501c4, which allowed them to do legislative stuff. And they retained Paul Kent to do a overlay zoning district for them. Paul Kent is an attorney from Madison that's worked primarily for citizen groups and for individuals, although for some towns as well, in the area of frac sand mining, a good environmental lawyer. He prepared this overlay district that had a lot of extra zoning in it, things about sizes of lots and this sort of thing. And the group that I was working with, this 501c4, had lots of farmers and lots of conservative town board officials and that kind of thing. They didn't want any more zoning. There's always been this tension between towns and counties about zoning. So we decided to put together a little legislative group of town board officials and property owners and myself, and looked at a way that we could make this a true zoning ordinance, but eliminate all of the proposed zoning. In other words, just have new restrictions. The way we did it, and I think it's absolutely legal, although this hasn't passed the board yet. It's passed the zoning committee, and we've been through our public hearing last week. But what we did, if you look on page 4, we identified permitted uses and conditional uses that would be allowed in this particular overlay district. And what we said they would be are all of those that presently exist. We incorporate all of the zoning that's or licensing that's in the towns and the villages now as part of this ordinance. Obviously, to do that, we had to make sure that the towns and villages involved would urge that the county adopted this. And they've all passed resolutions saying, please, Pepin County, adopt this ordinance. So we satisfy those elements of zoning to have permitted uses and conditional uses. They are what are already there. Our special prohibitions, we have 3. We say, number 1, that there will be no uses established in that Great River Road Preservation area that are inconsistent with current town and village zoning. In other words, so that's the first thing. The second thing this does is say that no industrial or commercial businesses will be established if they involve more than 50 truck trips per day. And we define what truck trips are. And truck trips are any truck with a gross vehicle weight rating of more than 50,000 pounds, which includes all of your quad axle trucks that are the primary truck used, and also all trucks that would have a gross weight, total weight of more than 50,000 pounds. So that means that you really are limiting it to 25 loaded trucks and 25 empty trucks. No business can be established in this district that involve more than that amount of truck traffic, that many truck trips. And this is significant for us because there isn't a single business, farming or otherwise, commercial or industrial, that involves more trucks than that in all of Pepin County. It takes a large business to be involved in that. The third And clearly that one is going to withstand any challenge under the due process or equal protection because it talks about all commercial and industrial, et cetera, including frac sand. The third provision bans frac sand operations of any kind, mining, processing, rail loading, barge loading from anywhere in that district. And of course, how can we single out a single business without violating, again, the Equal Protection Clause? Well, if you think about it, there isn't frac sand operations, even frac sand mining, really, in my judgment, as an attorney, do not fall within the category of non-metallic mining. There's a lot of reasons why they don't, but one of the reasons is that they're so complex. They involve so many operations. First of all, the product doesn't get sold in the state where it is extracted. It is dug, it's extracted, it's processed, and then it's shipped out. No other non-metallic mining activity in Pepin County, and I think in the state of Wisconsin, has that sort of a process. So that makes it very, very different. And secondly, it is so intensive, it has such a high impact on roads. We don't have any highway maintenance agreement with any other quarries or gravel pits or what have you in all of Pepin County. But we have one frac sand mining. And we negotiated a highway maintenance agreement with them. It took a long time to do it, where we said no bonding, but you've got to put cash up front for all the money it takes for us to improve the haul route, 8.2 miles, and that's $640,000 in the bank before we start hauling. And then for the next 20 years, which you say is the life of your product, of your activity, you have to maintain $1 million cash balance in one of our accounts so we can repair that road anytime we want. And if it goes below the million, you've got to bring it back up within 30 days or we shut you down. We can do that as singling out that industry and that highway maintenance agreement, just like we can do that in this ordinance, because the impact of that particular business activity is so far greater than any other. There isn't any similarly situated activity at all. And you will find, if you research that is one of the ways you can single out a particular business enterprise or an activity for special restricted treatment. So that's what we've done.
You're restricting it simply because it's requiring such an impact to it's impacting it in a way that no other industry has before, and that is your definition for your reason to.
Sure. No. There's a number of reasons why we're restricting or why we're singling it out, and we say that in the findings that it will cause irreparable harm to what we have down there. We decided that the best thing we could do politically, and it was really important for our area as well, was to focus on jobs. New jobs versus lost jobs. The tourism economy would disappear if we had 600 to 1,000 trucks on the highway. And so the last thing in the materials is actually the executive summary of a study that the same group did. They retained two professors from the University of Wisconsin, and as you will note in the summary, they said that on page 2, to summarize, we are confident that A, the impressive amenity endowments in the Stockholm and Pepin districts contribute to higher property values, healthy population, real estate growth, and more tourism activity relative to the remainder of the county, and B, frac sand operations and transport, absent the proposed ordinance. This one has the potential to significantly impair property values and tourist activity in Stockholm. So no other non-metallic mining activity in Pepin County can really affect property values significantly. There's some study done by Dr. Height for Michigan, and then it was used again in Virginia, that talked about loss of property value that were near a quarry. But from a county perspective, in terms of defending, singling them out, we know that the property values, I should say, we have a rational basis to believe that the property values would go down and that we would lose many more jobs than what would be gained. We know that for another reason. Now remember, we are an unzoned county. 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Thanks. We're an unzoned county, and last summer, none of our moratoriums covered rail loading. You know, somehow it does now because we amended it. But and we learned from Wabasha County's experience when they went against the Wabasha County moratorium, as Superior Sands did when they went into the city, that if you don't have that covered in your ordinance, you're likely to have a challenge to it. Wexford Capital's affiliate, Muskie LLC, Muskie Holdings, and they're up in Eau Claire and a number of other places. They went to our zoning office, and he pretty much green-lighted them for a specific design for a processing rail loading and barge loading facility. 200 rail car spur, 5 silos, 52 foot in diameter, and huge amount of 5, and a barge loading facility. We knew from looking at the EOG plant up in Chippewa Falls, I think they now have more than 200, their spurs can take more than 200 cars, but they were doing between 600 and 1,000 a day, and I don't know what their total capacity is, about 1,200 trucks per day.
I've heard 11.
Okay,
They may be bringing in more now because they're bringing it from outside their own mines.
So we had another indicator of the impact on this that would support our findings of fact. So I think in summary, and I've run through this awfully fast, the law, I think, is clear that towns and counties can prohibit frac sand mining in areas if they deem it necessary to protect assets in that town or county. The statute is clear about that. If you're going to do an ordinance that does that, you've got to have the backup studies. Some of your support can be anecdotal. In the economic study, one of the realtors that handles most of the high-end properties along there testified that based on loss of sales where they had offers and they went away, that the image of frac sand in this area is well known among banking groups, investment groups, and a couple of prospective buyers of properties between $500,000 and $1 million backed out of their offer because they had talked to their investment banker saying, you don't want to go down there because they're going to be overrun with frac sand. So, but you have to have that kind of support in your ordinance. Otherwise, you're speculating. Pure opinion doesn't work. You got to have a rational basis
Who
for it.
hired the study, the people that did the study? How long did it take and how much did it cost?
It was a 501c4 group. They were a combination of property owners, business owners, public officials who weren't on the board, but there's no, we checked the conflict
But
of
the county
interest.
accepted that then?
No, they haven't accepted it yet.
They may accept it.
But they raised the money. The economic study cost $12,000. It was started in December and it was finished on May 14th. And it went through, they would send it back to us and the group would do reviews, but it was an objective study. I mean, 2 professors with long curriculum vitas and credentials.
So what's the link between you doing a study with the 501c4 and it supporting the county ordinance?
I think the minute, the county hasn't adopted it yet, and the rational basis has to be the counties. So we had a public hearing last week, and the people that were involved in the 501c4 group all brought all the materials, the economic studies and the health studies, and they submitted those as part of the public record.
Okay.
And we have
At the public hearing.
Yeah, we have an extensive public record that if the county adopts this policy, they can point to a rational basis that is going to be, I think, can't be challenged successfully. The other thing that we've got here, we've got a severability clause in this ordinance, and almost all ordinances do. And that's a legal term that means that if the court finds one provision of your ordinance illegal or unconstitutional, that can be cut out, but the rest stays. So if our ban on total frac sand gets cut out because it's successfully challenged, we still have the provision in here that says no businesses involving more than 25 loaded and 25 empty. Politically, I think that I'm going to get this passed. I'm the vice chair of the zoning committee. I'm pretty sure I've got all the zoning committee except one in support of this. They had the courage to back what I told them about the moratorium, that it was legal, we had the power. And perhaps Pepin County is a little bit different than most counties because we don't have a county executive, we've got a lot of authority in our oversight committees, our standing committees. But I tell you, I think if citizens inform themselves and find attorneys that are experienced in litigation and willing to take on causes, you can fight back frac sand wherever you think it's necessary to protect things that are precious and valuable in your towns and counties. I mean, it can be done. Why it hasn't been done, I'm not sure. But if we do it, we'll be the first county, not the first town, but the first county to carve out an area and say absolutely, you know. We did another thing too, in getting ready for this area, this issue. The town boards of Stockholm and Pepin passed licensing ordinances, and these mining licensing ordinances. These ordinances allow frac sand mining, 2 sites per town, but the sites can be no larger than 20 acres. That is going to be a disincentive for a big energy company to come in and try to mine it. Hopefully, maybe a few farmers will run it, 10, 15 trucks a day. It'll be fit in right with all our manure haulers and our silage haulers. It won't disrupt what we've got down there, and they're probably going to make 10, 12 million a year doing that. And small scale frac sand mining, I wish that we had no frac sand mining. I don't like it. We live in an area that's clean, quiet, and beautiful. Frac sand mining is noisy, dirty, and ugly. I mean, that to me, that's the part of it. But they have this as almost as a backup that we're going to have. We're going to be able, hopefully, to ban along the river road. But if we can't, we're going to try to make sure that nothing big would come in there.
So those licensing things have already been put into place,
Yes.
even though it's been banned, or they just hoped that it will be banned.
The mining license ordinances have already been adopted. They are in effect.
But if this goes through,
Everything works together. This only covers the overlay district.
got it.
They
Oh,
cover
for
the whole
rest-
township.
Got it. Yeah.
You know, and they also ban rail loading and barge loading in their townships as well, because their townships go all the way to the river. You know, the difficulty in doing this for almost everywhere else that I've been and talked to people is the politics. You've got to have people that are willing to work together, that are knowledgeable, and they've got to organize in a way where they have some clout. By organizing, I don't just mean grassroots organizing. You got to try to get people elected to your town boards and your county boards, and you know, be willing to go out and try to raise money to get some stuff done. So,
What's the reason you didn't try to ban it throughout your county as opposed to just in this particular district?
I did not believe, and I don't believe, that I could get the votes to do that. So what do you look for? You know, you look for the things that really are very important that you need to protect, and the farmers would not have. I mean, they are strong people in terms of their right to use the property, the highest economic value. But in terms of doing it the way we did it, the farmers are supporting us. The only farmer that isn't supporting us has received $850,000 in federal subsidies in the last 12 years, and wants to harvest the sand on his property now. So it's a greed issue. And we only had, at our public hearing, 135 people. I think there were 34 that spoke in favor, another 40 that submitted materials, and 2 people spoke against. That's another help for us for you know, getting it passed. So, thank you very much. Any questions at all?
None of these, what you're talking about, affect the companies that are already operating in Pepin County?
None of them would be covered by these restrictions, because the restrictions are at a high enough level in terms of the truck traffic. We're not regulating truck traffic. We're regulating businesses that involve more than X number of trucks. There aren't any businesses in Pepin County, let alone in this district, that involve that many.
But there's already 2 mines operating.
There's one mine. There's one mine operating now up in Frankfort County. I mean, up in Frankfort Township, but not in our district. These regulations apply to this overlay district. The 2 towns that have, we know that they cannot generate more than 30 trucks per day on a 20-acre site. And then you know, and then the economics of where they take it. If there's no rail loading, no barge loading, where are they gonna drive it? From Eau Claire? They're gonna go on county roads? When they know that this Mr. Mavity, who's chair of the highway committee, is gonna make them put up cash, you know, to, I mean, you know, it's,
We're meeting in the cafeteria. Last session.
I do. Does anybody want extra handouts?